Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. Before we get too far into the video, if you wouldn't mind hitting the like button, that helps to get my channel promoted. I also love it if you'd leave a comment, ideas for videos, constructive criticism, how you do things. Those are all interesting topics for me, or if you just have a question. So I have this really pretty, about a 15 millimeter round citrine that I got. It's kind of a lemon quartz. And so I'm going to do kind of a cocktail ring out of it. So you got a big, bold, solitaire ring that sticks up pretty high, something that'll grab your attention. And I'm going to do a setting that I've been thinking about for a while, but I've never really tried. And it's going to kind of twist a little bit. So we got kind of a twisted look on the setting that's holding the stone. And I think I may call this a lemon twist ring, just because it seems to be appropriate for this one. Before we get started on this, I'd like to thank some people. I want to thank my patrons over on Patreon. I have a great group over there. I am continually surprised by how talented and how nice they are over there, and I really appreciate the community that they've built. I also appreciate the financial support that they've provided for me, so their support helps me to continue to do this. I also wanted to thank my YouTube subscribers. We just passed 14,300, which is awesome. Thank you for signing up. Thank you also for the super thanks and the buy me a coffees. That helps with the cost of materials these days. But most of all, thank you for the really nice comments that you leave. Nothing makes me feel better than for somebody to tell me that they're getting something out of my videos, or it helped them to pull themselves out of a slump, or anything like that. Is really moving, and I appreciate it. Thank you for that. All right, well, let's get started on this lemon twist cocktail ring. This is one of my design idea books, and I use them to sketch up my designs that I'm working on. I didn't used to do that, but I found over time that if I draw things up in advance, I get a better outcome. So less uncertainty about where I'm going with things. So they're available on my merch store if you're interested. The newer ones also have some conversion charts on the back. This one has fractions of an inch to decimals to millimeters, which I find handy because I'm trying to think more in metric terms, because it works better for jewelry. And there's a few other ones too, so check those out. Let me show you the ring, or the stone that I have here. I don't actually think my little stone grabbers are big enough to hold this one, so I'm just going to hold it like this so you can see it. It's a real pretty, I think it was 14 or 15 millimeters when I measured it. And it's a deep stone, so I'm going to have to do kind of a high setting. But it's nicely cut, and it's got a lot of fire to it. I think it's going to be a gorgeous ring. So I wanted to set it up pretty high, and I wanted to make it kind of, the stone is really the focal point. So the setting is not going to be terribly complex, other than it's going to twist a little to one side. And so I thought I'd mirror that on the band too, so I'm going to kind of carve the band into this. For the prongs, I'm going to use 16 gauge round wire, and I'm going to do something. I've never made a prong setting like this, but I've been thinking about this idea for a while. I'm going to take this little disc of 18 gauge sheet, and I'm going to solder on the 6 prongs kind of going like this off to the side, and that'll give us kind of that direction going that way. And then we'll use a dapping block to kind of dome them upwards, and then we'll see if we can get them all lined up nice. Put a little ring made out of 16 gauge for the stone's girdle to kind of sit on, and then we'll cut some notches and prong set it after it's mounted on our band. So the band itself is number 4 low dome half round, which is 5.89 millimeters. 16 gauge is 1.3 millimeters, and the sheet that I'm using for the very bottom, this little disc, is 18 gauge, and it's 1.02 millimeters thick. So first, I think we need to cut some pieces of 16 gauge, and I have some that I made just a minute ago and annealed it, so it should be pretty soft and malleable. If you're new to this, when you work hard in something by twisting it or bending it, or in this case I took some 14 gauge and pulled it through a draw plate, which reduced its size, but that stresses the metal over the entire length and causes it to get harder and harder. So in order to reduce that hardness, again, you heat it up to the point where it's almost to the kind of a red glow, and then let it cool off, and it softens the metal back up. So, well, I did do kind of a prototype start here, just so you can get an idea what it's going to look like. So it's got this 18 gauge on the bottom here, soldered them to the sides, and then tipped them up. I'm going to try and do it a little bit neater than this one. This was my first attempt, and we'll see how it goes. So I was surprised with how much I liked this though when I did it, so we'll see. Alright, I think I cut those ones pretty long, and I don't think I need them quite that long, so I'm going to do these about, let's see, let's go about 20 millimeters or so, so right about there. I'm going to cut 7 of these in case I screw up. I need 6 of them, but it's always a good idea to cut an extra when you're cutting pieces of all the same length, I think. I got to go give a little presentation at one of the galleries I'm in last night, which was, it's been a while since I've had to do any public speaking with real humans in front of me, so I was a little nervous. But it went pretty well, I thought. Everybody was nice. It was especially intimidating because I was giving it to a whole bunch of talented artists, which, you know, makes me a little insecure because everybody second guesses their own abilities. But most of these are painters and people who work in other mixed media. Okay, I'm going to straighten these out and file the ends. If you've never been to my channel before, I use hard silver sheet solder for almost everything. I use a liquid flux that I dribble on generally, or spray on with a spray bottle. My torch is a Silversmith model, which is their acetylene air torch. It's a great torch. I've been using that for years. I use a #1 tip. I think that covers most of the questions I get asked most frequently. Okay. This disc I cut out was about, and I just used a disc cutter if you've ever seen those. They have a bunch of holes in them. You can stick a piece of sheet in there and you stick the little cutter in the appropriate hole and hit it with a hammer and knock out a perfect circle. That's a little cheap one, but they make some really nice ones like that at Pepe Tools. I'm going to order one of those pretty soon. It's about 6 millimeters, looks like. So I'm thinking I'll line these two like that up. It seems to me each of these will be parallel to the one opposite, like that. That's not perfect, but we'll get it there before we solder, or close anyway. You get an idea in your head sometimes and you percolate on it for a while. I've been thinking about doing something like this for some time. So I thought today would be a good day to experiment. What I'm doing right now is I'm kind of trying to gauge how much of this is touching the disc in the middle there, so I get them relatively symmetrical. So I'm kind of eyeballing it, but if you're new to this, this probably isn't a project to start with. This would be more in the kind of advanced sort of area. So that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch it, because you may get some ideas from it. But I wouldn't attempt this right off the bat, because I don't want you to get super frustrated, because there's going to be some delicate soldering here that it helps if you have a little bit more experience. So save this for a little bit later time when you've had a little practice. Try not to bump too much here, so I don't want to move anything out of position. Okay, so I do a lot of pick soldering, which is where I use a soldering pick to pick up a little bit of solder, heat the piece up to the flow temperature of the solder, and then touch it where I want it to go. It's a really useful skill, and I think if you're interested, I'll put a link up there for you. I think it's worth learning because it'll really kind of move your abilities up. You got to kind of keep an eye on the wires when you're doing this, because sticking out there, they're a little vulnerable to melting. Come on. There we go. Don't be that way. That one was being a troublemaker. See, I shoved that one just a little bit that way so I could get these two parallel. It's one thing, if you can get the solder liquid again, you can move things around a little bit. Keep it liquid. Okay. That's pretty symmetrical, I think. The other thing we need to do is we need to make a ring that's just a little bit smaller than the outside circumference of this. And so let me find that wire again. And we'll cut an end off and file it flat. That's pretty close. Solder that close, then we'll round it out a little better. See if we got the size we want it to be. Sometimes when I'm doing this kind of thing, it takes me a couple of tries to get the size just right. So if you don't get it right on the first try, don't just try to do the best with what you have. I would go ahead and cut it and do it again. The more perfect you get things the first go around, the less compensating for imperfections you have to do later on. If that makes any sense. Well, I can't see it from above, and that's kind of what I wanted. It's sitting on the thing. That's what we're looking for. so you can't really see the ring from above. Okay. So I want to show you something else that's handy when you're doing stuff like this. It's called polar graph paper. And so these should be roughly at every 30 degrees, I think. So if you're trying to get exact degree measurements on stuff, sometimes this helps to get it that way. So I have marked here every 60 degrees, or no, every, let's see, what's 360 divided by 320? So these ones are every 60 degrees then. So if you make a mark here halfway between each of those, that'll give us 6 prongs. So if I extend those out. Okay. So this should be relatively accurate. We're going to go over, and I'm going to use an abrasive white wheel to cut a notch on the outside, just slightly in there, that angles a little bit that way, because the rotation is going this way. So just a slight angle coming up the side of there, and that will allow us to set this down in there. So let's go over there and do that. Sorry about the mess over here, but so I put an abrasive white silicone wheel on here. It's got a knife edge on it. And I'm just going to kind of on the underside a little bit. We're going up on the outside edge. Alright, let's go back and see if we can shape that other piece. So I have a dapping block here and a couple of dapping punches on the smaller side. And I'm going to start by just kind of like putting this in here. I'm trying to kind of, actually let's use a big one first. Try and get it kind of centered. Just kind of push it in there. What I do want though is I want all of these to be curved in enough so that I can make sure that this piece in the bottom is centered. That looks alright. Let's move down to a little bit smaller one here. I'm going to use a smaller punch. Part of it is I want to hit it hard enough to where this starts to dome outwards a little bit. But you can see these are staying pretty symmetrical, which is kind of nice. I think hopefully we did a little better than on my prototype. We'll see. Right now I'm kind of trying to even out the distance between each one of these. So they're not all going to line up on the first go round. And what I'll probably do is I'll figure out a way to hold this so that I can solder one of them in place, and then I'll be able to adjust all the other ones so that we can get them soldered the way we want them to be. So I'm going to keep playing with this until I get it about how I want it, like angled that these prongs are going outwards. which will also dictate how low that stone sits in there, kind of, because this will sit down further. I'm going to make a little mark right there. I like that height between the bottom and the side here, so make a mark right about there. Then what I might do is I might measure from here to the mark and make the same mark all the way around. So that's about 8 millimeters. I'm going to make a little file mark right here. Just putting a little indent in that one spot, and then find an old magnesium block here. Make sure this is still flat. Didn't accidentally bend it or something. Let's put this in here. Where's the one where I had the file mark? Okay, so I'm going to solder it in this one spot here. I'm going to try not to have anything come apart on us. No promises, though. Did not get it. So what happened was the ring reached temperature, but the other piece hadn't, and so it just jumped onto the ring. So I kind of didn't heat it evenly enough to get it to do what I wanted it to do. Both pieces kind of need to reach that temperature about the same time. I want to make sure these guys look, you know, pretty symmetrical. If I'm shooting to get a nicer looking one than the first one, I want to make sure they're pretty consistent. First one just looked a little bit rough. Okay. What I really want is I want that ring sitting on something so it can't drop any. Hopefully we kept it pretty symmetrical and straight, but we'll give it a shot. I'm going to go ahead and pick solder all of those, and we'll take a look at it. Let's take a peek and see how it went. This is why you always check your solder joints. This one here did not solder, so somehow I missed him. Let's see if we can stick this back in there. Which one is it? That one there. I'm going to redo both of these two. Making a big mess. Okay. I think we're looking better. Okay. Let's see how that looks in there. I think that'll work. So now we've got to work on the band, and then we'll figure out how to attach the two together. So, all right. So to make this kind of a pattern on here, I'm actually just gonna. I think I'm gonna use the Dremel to kind of carve notches. That same white wheel. See if we can't carve it, and then use the file and then carve it, and we'll see what we can come up with. So let's go over there and do a little dremeling. Things typically get pretty hot when you're doing this. So. Okay, so I got those kind of laid out now, and I think I'm going to take my hand file and do some serious hand filing to shape it. I kind of use my file like a sculptor's tool sometimes, and then I'll come back and smooth it out with that again, and we'll see how it looks. So I'm just going to keep reinforcing these grooves, smoothing them into kind of rounded shapes. But I'm not going to make you watch me do the whole thing. So I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I did a little bit of kind of sculpting with my file and with the Dremel. And now let's make that into a ring shape. I got to figure out how to attach this. And I'm thinking I might just, that's about the right size, if I just kind of scoop out the tops of each of these just a little bit with my abrasive wheel. Since this has got a curved bottom, I should be able to just kind of plop that in there. And then we'll, I think, I normally use hard solder for everything, but I think for this one I'm going to use some easy paste solder just so I don't have to reflow anything. And we'll just plop it on there and see if we can get it to stay. So, alright, I'll be right back. I think that's pretty close. So like I said, I'm going to use a little of this easy paste solder. So I'm going to put a little bit on there. Alright, let's see how that goes. Try not to bump things too much. One of the problems with magnesia blocks is you're burying part of the piece, so it kind of protects it from the heat, which makes it hard to get the entire piece up to temperature. So you have to kind of compensate for that by how you're heating things. Take a look at this here. I think this is going to be a fun rig. It's actually pretty straight on there. Okay, I'm going to let this pickle now, but let's kind of get a feel for what it's going to look like. Alright, so I'll put that in the pickle and then we'll come back and finish it up. Okay, so a couple of things I did off camera. I polished it up and I cut these prongs down a little bit shorter so that I could access the inside of this with my rotary tool to clean it up and polish it inside. And I stuck the stone in here and got it as even as I could. And then I made a little mark on the outside and cut a little groove on the inside of the prong, right where the girdle of the stone is, which is the widest part of the stone. And then from here on out, I pushed it in all the way around until it stopped moving, and that's where I'm at right now. And I do this different than a lot of people, but I'm going to use the flat side of this, and I'm going to start pushing those down, kind of go across from each other. I can really start kind of laying them down pretty tight. Never done prongs that were slanted like this, honestly, I don't think. So it'll be interesting to see how they end up turning out. Okay, so last thing is typically about midway up the facets between the girdle and the edge of the table facet, so right about there. I'm going to cut that off, and then I'll use my Dremel with an abrasive white wheel to kind of round those down, and then I'll use a blue abrasive wheel to smooth it out and get it all polished up. And then we'll get some pictures at the end. So, but overall, I think that's a gorgeous cocktail ring, so I'm pleased with that. I think that's going to make somebody really happy. So, and lots of possibilities for variations, different stones, different shapes of stones, who knows. But I like that. So there's the lemon twist ring. All right. Okay, well that was the lemon twist cocktail ring. I hope you enjoyed that one. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. And I'd love it if you'd take a moment and look at my channel page and peruse some of my other videos. I have 280 last I checked. I've been doing 3 per year for almost 3 years now, so there's quite a selection of topics there. No matter what level you are, I'm almost certain you'll find something that might be of use or interesting to you. So check them out. Come back and subscribe to my channel. And then don't forget to hit the video description down below. There's some important links. There's a link to my ebook if you want to download that. There's a link to those design idea books you can get on my merch store. There's a link to Pepe Tools. I'm an affiliate of Pepe Tools, so if you want to get yourself a nice rolling mill or something, go over there and check that out. And there's even a link to my Patreon, so check out some information about that community. It's a nice place. So, all right, well, thanks for coming. Take care. Happy silversmithing.